February 12th, 2023. A United States Air Force F-16 climbs to 20,000 feet over Lake Huron. The pilot is tracking an object. He cannot identify it. In his cockpit audio, leaked to the press 3 days later, he describes what he is looking at.
Well, what's on the balloon? I don't really know what. It definitely looks like something, there's some kind of object that's suspended in the air. It's hard to tell. It's pretty small. I cannot see it out there with my eyes. It's almost like the honest feet that the look all the balloon. You can definitely see strings hanging down below, but I don't see anything below it.
At 2:42 p.m. Eastern Time, on direct order from President Joe Biden, the F-16 fires a heat-seeking missile. Hours later, the four-star general in command of NORAD faces reporters at the Pentagon. His name is Glenn Van Herk. A journalist asks him a question that no American general had been asked publicly.
Thank you. Let's go to Helene Cooper, New York Times.
Have you ruled out aliens or extraterrestrials, and if so, why? Because that is what everyone is asking us right now.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Helene. I'll let the intel community and the counterintelligence community figure that out. I haven't ruled out anything at this point. We continue to assess every threat or potential threat unknown that approaches North America with an attempt to identify it.
3 years later, we still don't know what that pilot shot down. The object fell into the water. It was never recovered. But this is not the strangest thing the United States military has ever seen. To understand what happened over Lake Huron, we have to go back 57 years to the first time American astronauts saw something they could not explain.
In their lightweight suits, they have their helmets attached.
December 5th, 1965. One day into a 14-day mission.
Engines start, we have a liftoff.
The longest space flight anyone has ever attempted. The spacecraft is Gemini 7. The astronauts, Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, they are alone in low Earth orbit. And then Borman keys his microphone.
This is Houston. Say again, 7?
So we have a bogey at 10 o'clock high.
Gemini 7, is that the booster or is that an actual sighting?
So we have several, looks like the three up there, actual sighting. And we have very, very many, looks like hundreds of little particles going by the left out about 3 to 4 miles. Large, looks like perhaps a vehicle that's disintegrated.
Were these particles in addition to the booster and the bogey at 10 o'clock high?
Affirmative, ahead of us, 2 o'clock, slowly doubling.
Roger.
He has no idea what it is. The transcript of that call sits in a government vault for 60 years, until 2 weeks ago. May 8th, 2026. The United States Department of War launches a website, a government portal, PURSUE, the Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters. The first batch, 162 declassified files. Some of them go back 70 years. And inside them are the recordings of NASA astronauts describing things that the United States government classified for over half a century. July 1969. Apollo 11. The mission that put the first humans on the moon.
1, 0, all engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program.
Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
The crew: Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, Buzz Aldrin. On July 31st, 9 days after returning home, Aldrin sits down for a technical debriefing. He reports 3 things. Number 1, about a day from the moon, the crew spots a large object floating in space. Aldrin calls it something of a sizable dimension. They lock a telescope onto it. They cannot identify it. Number 2, trying to sleep in the darkened spacecraft. Aldrin sees little flashes inside the cabin, spaced a couple of minutes apart. Number 3, on the way home, a bright light shines through the window. Aldrin's own words from the transcript. A fairly bright light source, which we tentatively ascribed to a possible laser. But here is the part the internet leaves out. 3 sentences later, on the very same page, Aldrin revises his own theory. His next words: it was more probably a reflection off a lake. Aldrin himself solved it in 1969. But Apollo 11 is not where this story ends.
Swim 1 is getting ready to deploy swimmers.
3 years later, 3 different astronauts saw something that to this day no one has been able to explain. December 7th, 1972, the final Apollo mission.
Lighting up the area. It's just like daylight here at Kennedy Space Center as the Saturn V is moving off the pad.
The last time human beings would walk on the moon.
When, much to my surprise, a pair of bunny eyes.
The crew: Eugene Cernan, Ronald Evans, Harrison Schmitt. Schmitt is the only trained geologist NASA ever sent into space.
Oh, look at the dark minerals in there. Are those dark black? Yeah, they may be ilmenite or fresh piercing.
8 hours after entering lunar orbit, Ronald Evans looks out his window. And what he says next is now on the record.
A few very bright particles or fragments or something that go drifting by as we maneuver.
Then Harrison Schmitt looks out his own window.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of big ones out my window down there. Just bright. Looks like the 4th of July out Ron's window.
Fireworks in space, 240,000 miles from Earth. Mission Commander Eugene Cernan sees them next. In his words, a very bright spot that flashed right between my eyes, like a train coming at you. Only with a flash. He cannot sleep. For the next 3 hours, he watches them. In his report, Cernan describes a bright physical object, rotating, flashing in rhythm, way out in the distance. He suspects it is the discarded upper stage of their own rocket, but he cannot confirm it.
I got the impression maybe they were curved a little bit, as if they might be off the side of the S-4B. That's a wild guess.
And then something happens that nobody has been able to explain. 3 days into the mission, Schmitt is studying the lunar surface from orbit. Crater Grimaldi, just below the spacecraft. He sees it clearly, a bright flash on the lunar surface. Houston tells him to mark it on the map. Then they go silent, In the technical crew debriefing, 3 weeks later, Schmidt confirms it again. He says the flashes continued throughout the entire flight. And there is something else. One photograph, taken on the lunar surface, frame 32, 3 blue dots in the lunar sky, in a perfect triangular formation. The Pentagon released the photograph on May 8th. They did not explain it. To this day, no one has. So here is where we have to be honest. For 50 years, NASA has had an explanation for what astronauts see in deep space. They even built a device to catch it. They called it Apollo Light Flash Moving Emulsion Detector, and the cause is something invisible, beyond Earth's magnetic field. Particles called cosmic rays travel at nearly the speed of light. A cosmic ray passes through the retina, the cells fire, and the brain sees a flash that was never there. NASA measured it. In darkness, a flash every 2.9 minutes. Aldrin reported his flashes just minutes apart. The numbers match. For the anomalies inside his cabin, the explanation fits. And for some of what Cernan and Evans saw out their windows, it may fit too. This is the part most UFO videos leave out. Most of it has an answer. But cosmic rays do not form triangles in a photograph. And cosmic rays are not the size of a four-wheeler hovering over Lake Huron. So we go back to where we started, to the F-16, and to the general who gave the order, Glenn Van Herk, 4 stars, commander of NORAD, the man who, on a direct order from the president, sent a fighter jet to fire a heat-seeking missile at something no one could name. When a reporter asked if it could be extraterrestrial, he didn't say no.
I'll let the intel community and the counterintelligence community figure that out. I haven't ruled out anything.
And then, for 3 years, silence, no footage, no photos. The object that fell into Lake Huron was never recovered. The case was closed without ever being solved until May 22nd, 2026. 2 weeks after PUR-SUE went live, the Department of War opens the vault a second time. 64 new files, 51 of them video, and one of them is labeled DOW UAP PR-071. For the first time, we see what the pilot saw. 46 seconds, black and white, filmed through the jet's infrared targeting pod. 11 seconds in, the sensor locks on. A single bright shape dead center, holding still. Until it isn't. At 20 seconds, the Pentagon's own file describes a high-energy event. The F-16 fires a heat-seeking missile. The object breaks apart. The official assessment? Likely a balloon. The footage still doesn't answer the real question. Not what it was, but whose it was. And why, no one will say. And it can't tell us where the pieces went either, because no one ever found them. 3 sightings, nearly 60 years apart. 1965. Frank Borman looks out the window of Gemini 7 and calls something a bogey.
This is Houston. Say again, 7?
So we have a bogey at 10 o'clock high.
1972. 3 astronauts on their way home from the moon. Watch lights flash, rotate, and form a triangle in the dark. 2023. An American jet fires a missile over the Great Lakes at an object the military still cannot name. The official position has not changed. There is no confirmed evidence of extraterrestrial life. Most of these cases have ordinary answers. Balloons, drones, ice, the human eye playing tricks in the dark. Most, not all. The triangle in that photograph has never been explained, and the object in the lake was never recovered. And there is one more thing. PURSUE is a joint effort. The White House, the intelligence community, the FBI, NASA, the Department of War. All of them opened their files, all except one. The Department of Energy, the agency that guards America's nuclear weapons, handed over nothing. 0 documents, 0 videos, 0 pages. What connects all of this may be nothing at all, or it may be everything. But somewhere at the bottom of Lake Huron, there is still an object the United States shot out of its own sky and never went back for. Some of it is at the bottom of a lake. The rest is still on its way up.